You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Welcome to Comics with My Kids podcast, the official podcast for the comicscornerbox.blogspot.com. I'm your host, Matt D. And today I'm with...
Logan D.
Alright, Logan. Today we're talking about a trade paperback of a comic series that I read when I was younger. So why don't you tell us, what you read today?
G.I. Joe.
Fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
Yep, it's the collected trade paperback of the original Marvel Comics edition of G.I. Joe, originally printed from June of 1982, all the way to, April 1983. It collects issues 1 through 10, written by Larry Hama with Herb Trempe and Stephen Grant. Pencilers was Herb Trempe with Don Perlin and Mike Vosberg. Let's see.
I've read from 1 to 5.
What?
I've read from 1 to 5.
No, you read this whole thing and you recently...
No, I read volume 1 to volume 5.
Yeah. But we're just talking about volume 1 today. So, G.I. Joe, is this the first time you heard about G.I. Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. What got you thinking about G.I. Joe?
So when we were at our karate dojo, I saw that...
That's DSK Flying Tigers over in Lake Station, Indiana.
I was allowed to say.
Yeah.
So, at his dojo, there was a sign for Snake Eyes. And I asked Dad, hey, what's Snake Eyes? And so, my dad told me about it. And then
what was Snake Eyes? What was it?
He's a kind of like a ninja from G.I. Joe.
And so, but the sign was promoting what?
It was promoting Snake Eyes.
Yes, the what?
The movie.
There you go, that's the words I'm looking for. Okay, so you wanted to know about Snake Eyes because you saw the cool movie poster at the dojo. So I gave you this book, and so what do you think about this book so far?
I thought it was really cool.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about this collected edition of G.I. Joe?
In the beginning, it starts with a person talking and...
Well, how about before we dive into the book, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is G.I. Joe?
G.I. Joe is a group of superheroes that fights the Cobras.
Okay,
which is
so you say superheroes. So do they have special powers?
No.
Or are they just...
They're like the military.
Yeah, they're different branches of the military. So like some's the Army, some people are from the Navy, the Air Force... different parts of the military.
And one of them's obvious that he's from the Air Force. Although I'm not going to say his name because you don't feel good on this.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about issue 1 and how the whole story for G.I. Joe starts?
So, issue 1 starts off with Dr. Bloodhark, and she's a physicist, I think it was.
Yeah.
A nuclear physicist.
Okay.
And she was talking about a project they called the Doomsday Project. and you don't know, and I don't know anything about the dude.
Who was trying to get Dr. What did you say her name was? Bloodheart?
Yeah. The Cobras. And the Cobras had guns that were disguised as video things. You know, that the news people use to,
a video camera and interviewing equipment, microphones and stuff, and they had weapons smuggled inside them?
No, they had cameras, and those cameras were actually guns.
Okay. So they tried to kidnap this Dr.
Bloodheart.
And then, do they succeed?
Yes. Issue 1 is all about the G.I. Joe trying to get her back. And at the end, they succeed.
Okay, so how do we find out about G.I. Joe? What does the story tell us?
So, in one of the parts, it shows pictures of people and their names under it.
Okay, so G.I. Joe gets called in by the military thanks to General Flagg, right?
Yes.
And so then we learn a little bit about the members of G.I. Joe. We've got Hawk, who kind of is the field leader, and then we have characters like Zap and Grand Slam and Clutch and the characters Snake Eyes and Breaker. And we're kind of introduced to some of those guys.
Yeah, Rock and Roll.
Yep. Stalker. And so then they get called in. Who goes to rescue the good doctor?
Stalker goes in using a jetpack.
Okay, no, I mean, what all members of the team are called in? I mean, is it all of the Joes? Isn't there like a handful of them that go in?
I can't list them all.
Okay, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of the G.I. Joe team going.
No, that's
to
just
rescue.
one group.
So how do they find out where the doctor was kidnapped or where she's being held?
They have a map that they look at, and they talk about it, and they know castle, and they point to it and think that's where she's being held.
Okay.
So they go there.
All right. And who's at this castle?
The Cobras.
Okay. And who's in charge of the Cobras?
Cobra Commander.
All right. And who's with him?
The Barbarians.
The Baroness.
The Baroness.
Okay. And so G.I. Joe shows up the team.
And they do exactly as the Cobras plan. They take out the dummy ships.
There's a fight on the island with Cobra and the Joes.
Yeah.
What happens? How does the Joes save the day? Do the Joes save the day?
Yes.
Issue 1 establishes then, who G.I. Joe is, what they're doing, how they're here to fight Cobra and to save the day. From this first issue, what characters do you like?
Well, this one character I like throughout every issue. And later on, in Volume 5, we find a new character that's kind of like him. But his name is Snake Eyes.
Okay. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Snake Eyes?
So Snake Eyes is someone who can't talk.
Why does he talk? Why can't he talk?
Because he's born without the ability to talk.
Not necessarily.
But remember the backstory in one of them? Before he had the battle scar, one scene when he got the battle scar, he couldn't talk. So yeah, he's born without the ability to talk.
Alright. And then, so how does he interact with the Joes then?
He gives them hand motion.
So he uses sign language?
Not necessarily. He doesn't usually talk to them, but he signs them when to get down or when the coast is clear.
So he uses a form of sign language.
Sometimes he just does it.
So what do you like about Snake Eyes?
There's a ninja, and throughout the volumes, there's many times I thought he was dead, and even in Volume 2, I thought Snake Eyes was dead forever.
Oh yeah?
But he survived.
Cool.
But you'd have to read Volume 2 to figure it out.
So what makes you keep wanting to read G.I. Joe? Because, you started off with book 1 and you read it, you enjoyed it, Why'd you want to move on to the second volume?
Because I enjoyed it and I thought that it was cool, so I continued reading it.
Okay, what did you enjoy most about the book?
I enjoyed every time that the Joes would stop the Cobras.
Oh, okay.
And what's really funny is in future volumes, they come up the Cobras have things that are parts of Cobras, like their helicopters are called fangs.
Okay.
But the Joe's helicopters are called dragonflies.
Right. Yeah, because the Cobras kind of have more like there's their underwater soldiers are called eels. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like a lot of like snake-based bad guys and snake-based themed.
Because when you think about it, eels are like underwater snakes.
Yep. All right. So what didn't you like about the book?
I did not like. Wait, that's a big review.
It's okay. You can talk about it. These comics are from the 1980s, buddy. When I was a kid, so I mean, you can get as spoilery as you want. Pretty sure people have read this book. If they haven't read it, they can go out and they can get the trade paperbacks at their local library, or they could pick up digital copies on Hoopla, or even at the Comixology. Because again, these are the comic books that were originally published in the 1980s from Marvel Comics. So they've been around for a good 30 years now, buddy.
Now here's something. If you are listening to this and you were a kid, you can ask your dad if he read the book G.I. Joe. He probably has. Yeah,
it was very popular with kids in the 80s. So, you know, people that are in their 40s and 50s today might be quite familiar with G.I. Joe. In fact, when we were at the karate competition today, someone had seen you had the book, and he said, "What did he say to you?"
I think it was Yo-Joe.
Yeah, because what does G.I. Joe? What do all the members of G.I. Joe say?
Yo-Joe.
Yep. All right, buddy.
It says it on the back of volume 1.
Yep.
It says Yo-Joe, and then it says, "What's this battle cry?" So you know that Yo-Joe is a battle cry.
Yep.
The immortal battle cry.
So, with our new rating system, buy it, borrow it, or forget about it, where would you put G.I. Joe?
Buy it.
Buy it? I would agree. I think G.I. Joe is a great series of comic books to read. And from a parent, it does have a lot of cool moral values. It's the classic good guys versus bad guys. It definitely shows that, you know, there's a group of people out there that are willing to sacrifice themselves and help save the day to prevent bad guys like the Cobras and the evil terrorist organizations.
Yeah, and when they found out that people were slaughtered, they were sad because they were trying to protect them. But by the time they got there, they were all dead.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add about this volume 1 of G.I. Joe?
No. Except if you add another one, then you got volume 2.
Yeah. So, I know there's nothing else that I want to include. If you get a chance, folks, go out and check out the G.I. Joe cartoon from the 80s. Definitely a show that if you watch it as a kid, it makes rewatching a little more difficult. But if you have kids, they might enjoy it as well.
Wait, there's a TV show?
There was a cartoon back in the 80s. I used to have it on DVD, but I sold it in a garage sale, so I can see about getting it from the library.
Or it might be on Netflix or Disney Plus.
Yeah. I do know that there was 2 live-action movies made of G.I. Joe, and they just released the Snake Eyes movie, so hopefully we can see that sometime soon. There's nothing else that I want to add. Logan, is there any last-minute things you want to add about G.I. Joe, the comic podcast, or anything at all?
Nope.
Okay. Well, folks, thanks for listening to this review of G.I. Joe Volume 1. Catch more of our shows on Apple Podcast,
Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or our website,
comicscornerbox.blogspot.com. This show is part of the EMC network and recorded by Down Studio. If you like this show, give us a rating or review at Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or Podchaser. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And all you kids out there, keep on reading. This has been Matty D.
And I'm Logan D.
And good...
whatever time.
Good night.
Why do you always say that? I mean, yes, we're usually recording it, but it's not always nice that they listen to it. It
Fine.
doesn't matter when we record it.
Have yourself a great,
Whatever
fantastic,
time.
whatever time.
And it's even funny that way.